All right. Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Let's see. So it's the 22nd of November. How many people are presenting today? I just have some teacher discussion.
Me,
Big one.
big one.
No? Short? No? Oh, that's two no's. Liam?
Yeah, I have one.
Lily? No? Okay. All right. It's okay to take a week off here and there, but really generally every week. Yeah. Okay, let's get going. T-shirt discussion wise, this is my model.
I know.
Are we interested? You had comments about something seems a little off kilter. What was that?
The word near, I don't
It
know.
seemed low.
Oh yeah, it looks lower than lab does. It looks
Yeah,
like
but like,
unequally curved.
yeah, it doesn't like really follow the curve. I don't know, I see like that it doesn't, but
So I think. Here, so- I'm turning the volume up. Hang on, a little on the low side. I don't know if that is the right screen.
yeah.
Okay, I think that's better. So there's, I think, a couple of things going on, but one, I think I'll check it on the PowerPoint. I was going to load the PowerPoint up directly, but I think on the PowerPoint it is even, but it doesn't look even. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean it might just be like because it's centered on the eye and not like the space between like two words on one side and two words on the other side that it looks kind of off.
That's probably right. Yeah, this is like one of those things in cartography where it technically is balanced in a line, but it doesn't look like it, and that's kind of what matters. So I guess one question is how much does it bother people? Like, does it look off? And then I can figure out if that's the case, I could like recenter it and kind of bring it by a little bit and make the balance point between the H and the I, between Earth and imaging.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I think maybe just like a slight adjustment. I think it should be fine.
Because my opinion, where the eyes start from, if there is the space,
Uh-huh.
then it will be balanced.
To the left of the eye.
Oh, I see, this is the center point, I guess. If the space comes here and I start from here, then it will be balanced. It's.
Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else? That's an easy adjustment, and I can put a little check probably tonight once I make the adjustment. I wasn't sure about like stars and stuff above, or I think that would start to get a little crowded, like if it
Yeah,
other stuff, it would look a little bit weird,
I think it looks good.
but and then I'm planning on maybe like a Binghamton green on the lettering, right? So all of the like this is just black and white, but we can make it any color we want. So like the whole thing could be kind of green. I guess it couldn't be too dark green because that would be difficult. Well, I guess it depends on what color shirts we want. I usually do like kind of just like a black shirt or something like that because it kind of goes with everything. Um, and then the coloring could be whatever. It could be, we could kind of pick out something. And I'll get a mock-up before I hit purchase. And speaking of purchasing, the way I usually do this is I buy them for everyone. I will buy you one lab t-shirt. So free. And I like to get the nice soft ones. I don't like to get the scratchy ones. So they should be nice. So at some point I'll get everybody's sizes.
You see here the ring is kind of.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was the computer did that. Do you not like it? I could try to fix it.
Everyone else is fine with it. It's my house.
So
It also doesn't, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
And
It also
go all
doesn't
the
come
way
together
down.
over here, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't, like, that's a little bit
Yeah.
off, but that, it kind of, I think it adds to like the appeal, like it's not too clinically perfect. It's sort of a little bit mushy, but you know,
The line is supposed to represent the flight path of a drone.
not really. No, I actually had to delete a bunch of stuff because on the original design, there was like several rings around the Earth, but I found that way too visually distracting. So I cut out all of the ones that weren't the main one. And then what was there instead of the drone was a satellite, but I didn't want it to be a satellite. So it kind of is evocative of the drone flight. It wasn't intended to be it exactly, but it evokes that idea.
Right.
That's all right.
You know what would be cool is, this is kind of getting away at it and maybe too much investment, but you know how it's showing us a certain part of the world? What if you're able to get it to where it shows New York and Binghamton?
Not sure I'm gonna be able to do that.
Yeah.
I agree that it would be interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah. It'd be entirely hand edits, unfortunately. Usually my prompt engineering on ChatGPT, like it's amazing what you can get with a little, but then like making refinements I find is just maddening. Like you get an initial design, you're like, yes, that's almost it. Just do this other little thing. And it's like, nope. It took me forever to get a drone that I was happy with. Like I should show you all of the 100 drones. Like they all had faces, and I was like, I don't think it needs a face. And I feel like take the face off, and then here's another drone without the face, and it would have a face. So yeah, weird stuff like that.
Yeah, I like the drone idea and then the stars. But when I look at it, it looks like the drone is taking a shot from the stars, which is off. It's like, that is the impression I'm getting.
It's what?
Like the drone is taking images from
Oh, and from
From
space?
space.
space.
Oh,
Yes. I don't know, but
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, right? Like it's you ever like Google song lyrics, and you're like, what is this song about? And it's like, it's not really a little here and a little there. So yeah, it's I think it's kind of like a dreamlike quality to it. Like it's, if you look at it too hard, you know, there are plot holes in it. But
Different, is it easy to change the font
yes, that is super easy.
about that? This is very. I don't like it.
That's fine. Yeah. Can you find something that you do like and make a couple suggestions? That would be easy,
Sure,
because
yeah.
the list is really long, and I did look at like 20 of them. But I am also not, I did want something clear.
Yeah, it's, I guess, okay, maybe it's just like very, like plain, like very,
Yeah, but if you've got ideas, I'm
maybe if it's simple, maybe if you just bolded it, how would that?
sure, I can try that. Yeah, I should have just had the PowerPoint slide and we could do it. I do have it on my laptop. I just can't get it all connected in the amount of time we need, but.
Oh, me too, yeah, that looks nice. Did it create the little figure too?
It did, yeah. And I had a couple of versions of the figure, and this is the one that I liked the best. There's kind of one where he's kind of like looking out, which I also liked, okay. But I kind of like this one because it's kind of like contemplative down, like looking down, you know, it's like looking at the surface, so I did like it. And I like the drones kind of over his shoulder, like a little buddy, like a helper. And I wanted something that was going to be kind of like a friendly drone. So, but this is why I got the faces, and I think I just couldn't get it off that track. Like once I said friendly drone, it was like, how about one that's smiling at you? So, you know, some of them get pretty sinister, like in ChatGPT. If you have to get an image of a drone and they didn't want to do that at all. A, they don't go with the thing, and B, it's creepy to have a sinister looking drone. So
if we want more like also like someone to look at it, my sister does graphic design animation, so I can like send it to her and see what she thinks.
Sure,
if we
yeah.
find one we
Yeah.
like.
Sure. My hope is to get it finalized in the next couple of days so we can get the order ready. Maybe they'll be ready before Christmas, which would be cool, the winter break, but maybe not. So either way, it'd be nice to kind of get them underway. All right, that's it for me. Let's turn it over to Sharifa.
Yes.
Was Peter coming today?
He uploaded something, so I assume so.
Keyboard or clicker? Okay, I think that's in that clear box, that clear tote next to the AR sandbox. Yep.
Is it like Raymond's?
But it does, but it won't show up on the screen very well. If you want to use a pointer, probably best to take this and then you can use the mouse to point to stuff.
Oh, okay.
You
I'll
want to
do
pick your
that.
seat? Okay.
So to give context as to why I'm doing this presentation or why I want to go first is because I'll probably take the longest. So what this presentation is it's supposed to be my thesis proposal defense. So because I'm in the earth sciences department, for every grad student, once you hit your second year, you are required to do a seminar presentation. Your presentation typically is supposed to be between 20 to 25 minutes. So I'm hoping to hopefully aim towards 22 minutes. The presentation that I'm gonna share with y'all today is not the complete presentation. I don't even think it's gonna be considered a practice talk. I'm more so looking for everyone's feedback in terms of the flow of the presentation, if you think that some things could be moved around, as well as the contents of the information, and if it's lacking anything or if there's too much detail. So with that, my project is addressing the dynamic nature of PFM1 mines using remote sensing and geophysical techniques. To begin, I want to go over the history of landmines. I'm going to be going over 3 significant events where landmines were utilized. The first one goes back to 52 BC. During the Roman Empire, Caesar wanted to obtain access or basically win over this part of modern day France known as Alesia. And this was a war that went on between the Romans and the Gallic people, which were native to the area. So the blue area indicates where the Romans were camping, and the red on the left is where the Gallic people were camping. So in this instance, or in this case, they decided to dig a trench, which you see on this blue line here, where the inner portion of the trench was approximately 16 kilometers long and the outer was 20.7 kilometers long. So Caesar set out traps against the Gallic and these 2 defensive lines, and it took them 30 days. So in this case, they were not necessarily using landmines in the context that we know it as, but rather they had these traps that were under the ground. And so that's kind of the preface for that. So this is a drawing of what that land or that trench looked like. So they used 3 different types of traps. They used stimulus. So if you're looking at the image, you're going to start from the left and work your way towards the right. So the stimulus is a metallic hook that would catch the person going through the trench, followed by lilies. Lilies were wooden stakes that were sharpened, and then we actually have other stakes as well. So the Romans were able to find paths where they knew the traps were not laid. So that's how they were able to keep themselves safe. The other instance of landmines was during the American Civil War. This was where they typically used bagasse, which is known as the poor man's artillery. This is when we had the introduction of gunpowder as well as the electrical initiation of landmines. Landmines in the American Civil War were mainly used as a Confederate weapon. They used them to damage or sink Union ships that were going through the Mississippi or the Atlantic coast. And so by the end of the American Civil War, they had sunk 29 ships and damaged 14. And the usage of landmines during this time period was really taken off after Matthew, a Confederate, met with the Confederate Secretary of the Navy in 1861. When he showed them the mechanisms of landmines, he was immediately promoted to a captain and given a large sum of money to continue that. So again, this is not the final presentation. You can clearly see that I'm missing some information as well as photo credits. But the last instance that I want to highlight of the usage of landmines was the World Wars. So during World War I and II, we saw the usage of anti-personnel and anti-tank mines. So anti-tank or anti-personnel mines were adopted from artillery shells. By the end of World War II alone, we had 600 different types of mines. In this case, the Germans were really they were really the ones at the forefront creating and designing different types of landmines. I've been talking about landmines. I mentioned anti-personnel and anti-tank. I wanted to give an overview, so 3 broad areas of landmines that I want to cover. So looking at the orange, we have 3 broad types: anti-personnel, anti-tank or vehicle, and submunitions. I want to personally focus on anti-personnel. So the graphs in the green under the anti-personnel are the different ways you can activate or disperse anti-personnel landmines. So anti-personnel landmines are designed to activate upon a certain pressure, be it a human or an animal. Pressure activated landmines are triggered by an amount of pressure applied, and then it detonates upon activation, typically. Tripwire is activated by a string or wire. Directional, it detonates at a specific direction. This is more common in anti-tank or vehicle landmines. And then the one that I am particularly interested in is the scatterable, which you see at the bottom here. Scatterable landmines are deliberately dispersed remotely by rocket. They're usually in some type of a casing or aircraft or artillery shells. They scatter, so it's very hard to quantify how many of these mines are dispersed within a given area. Whether you're looking at anti-personnel, anti-tank, or submunitions, any of these, if they do not explode upon disbursement, they are known as unexploded ordnance. There's a really great organization known as the Landmine Monitor Organization. They have been putting out annual reports since 1999 of the casualties and demographic information of landmines. So this past report that they put out in 2023, they were able to depict the number of casualties in 2022. So you see that world map there. Syria remains at the top. So the darker the color on the map, the more casualties there are. Syria remains at the top, followed by Ukraine, understandably so, Yemen, and Myanmar. Some more information about the demographics. So unfortunately, civilians make up 85% of the casualties recorded alone in 2022. That's followed by the military, which you see on the pie chart at the bottom right in green. A sliver of unknown, and there are some deminers that have been hurt by landmines. Unfortunately, children make up almost half of the civilian casualties. This is obviously a very important thing to consider. The Landmine Monitor Organization also puts out a report of the stockpile of anti-personnel mines. So stockpile meaning that these nations or countries continue to harbor these mines and they do not try to detonate them or destroy them. The reason why I want to highlight that chart specifically is because many of these nations in that top chart there did not sign the Ottawa Convention of 1997 to ban mines. So that means that they continuously have these mines and that they are deployed. In 2022, unfortunately, 782 children were injured and approximately 386 were killed by mines in over 30 countries. Turtles Can Fly is a film that is based on a true story. It is about a Kurdish refugee camp back in 2003 right before the invasion of the US, or before the invasion of Iraq by the US. And it's about the story of orphan children that are told by their elders within their community to go out into suspected fields where they think mines are, and to try and unearth them and take them out. So unfortunately, children remain to be a casualty from landmines. The problem with the scatterable landmines, specifically the PFM1, is they continue to remain as physical and psychological barriers in war-torn countries. I am specifically interested in areas where they have non-active combat zones, so areas where there is no active warfare going on. The distribution pattern, the plastic body of these mines, the size and the color of it, its ability to camouflage, renders it very difficult to detect these mines using traditional geophysical methods. In addition to that, there is new development in the pattern of distribution of these mines. So that means that we have more threats to civilians. The new development in terms of the disbursement pattern is traditionally these specific types of mines have been known to be dispersed by aircraft where they have a fixed radius of where they're going to fall. But with the normalcy of using drones, a lot of people now are attaching these mines to drones, and when you do that, you no longer have a fixed radius. So that means we could have a mine that's dropped here and one dropped miles or kilometers away, and that poses a new threat. So my objective for my thesis is to conduct a first pass analysis of detecting these PFM1 mines utilizing UAV and RGB prototype in individual georeferenced images, and to train a deep learning model to detect these mines in different environmental settings. This is a very specific objective, and as I go through the slides, you will see portions of the objective at the bottom of the slide and parts of it highlighted to try and emphasize how I got to that conclusion. So first, I think it's important to highlight the standards of humanitarian demining. So the International Mine Action Standards has 5 steps that they've highlighted or outlined. The one that I am most interested in and most applicable to my thesis is the survey, marking, and clearance. So that's the step 2. So they provide clear definitions for surveys. So you have 2 types. You have the technical survey, which is highlighted here in the middle. And then you have non-technical surveys as well. The technical surveys, they've defined as a primary method for defining and accurately the extent of areas that require clearance. For your non-technical surveys, they have defined it as the starting point for assessment. For research and development, I think it's a combination of the 2 of them. I think that we are doing things that are the starting points for assessment of the land, but we're also trying to accurately explain or depict the extent of areas that require clearance. You can see at the bottom there, I've highlighted my objective, and I've highlighted a portion of it to try and explain how I got to that conclusion. So this is the PFM1 mine. This is a plastic scatterable anti-personnel landmine. It's also known as the butterfly mine, is the more common name. It mimics the maple seed in terms of its shape as well as its descent. It was produced in former Soviet Union, also Russia. It was reverse engineered by the American Blue 43 anti-personnel landmine. The body of it is high density polyethylene plastic. And this specific mine does not self-destruct, so it requires pressure. It's pressure activated. The pressure it requires to detonate is greater than 5 kilograms. So these mines you can see on the image to your right are very tiny. So they're hard to detect. You can see in the middle, we have this fuse, and within this fuse well, we have a trigger. So once the pressure has been reached and it goes over that 5 kilogram maximum, there is a spring inside of this fuse well that will move. And then as that moves, if it reaches that threshold, it will then detonate.
Before you move that slide, can I give you a quick comment?
Yes.
So one would be to have an indicator of the size of the mine here so that they can see.
Okay.
Like basically a scale, right?
Yes.
You can say this is 6 inches across or whatever.
Okay.
And then second was just a question, was this from the scan that you did at the design lab?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That adds a lot. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think I need to find a way to like let it just go like as a GIF or something. So
Oh yeah, that's the setting. If this is a video, you can just set it to continue.
okay.
Yeah.
Great. So then this is where I think it gets kind of fuzzy for me. So going into the methodology of my thesis, I've approached it as two separate things. So first, one research question is, can we detect the PFM1 mines using the near-infrared multispectral bands? This slide is not finished. Some of these concepts you know, so I'm not going to really go over, such as the electromagnetic wave spectrum. I plan on going over the tools that I used, so talking about the DJI Phantom 3 Pro, maybe talk about some of the specs, and then the Parrot Sequoia sensor as well. I was thinking it might be nice to maybe put the bands that are used in the sensor on the spectrum to kind of
Yeah.
really hit home, I guess. In this space here, I'm going to probably put the study area, so the site that I went to in Oklahoma this past June. Additional information I would like to include in this slide is the altitudes at which we flew the drone at the field site as well. So kind of a overview of this slide. Next, I go into the results of the first proposed method. So can we use the near infrared? So this goes into the actual processing of the data. So we have the 4 flights that we did, 5, 10, 15, and 20-meter flights. And I basically go through each of the slides talking about the reconstruction. So talking about approaching it as first making an orthomosaic of the images. I don't know if it's useful. It probably will be. I think to talk a little bit about how we make the ortho photos. So maybe talking about the camera calibration settings that goes into that.
And I would lead with one that did work well. I think
Okay.
it's good to show that they don't always work well, but I wouldn't make that the lead.
Okay.
Yep.
So then I just go through it. This one I believe is a video. I just wanted to highlight how badly that reconstruction went and that there is no way you can save this, as Dr. Pringle and I have been over. So that's the 5 meter. I go into the 10 meter. So right now it's just going in order of the altitude.
Okay.
So that's the 10 meter one. I go into the 15 meter flight and then the 20. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about, maybe this slide could be moved, but I wanted to talk about how we got into the reconstruction of the images and the things that we need. So in this case, this was the GCPs. I shared this in a previous lab report. I think I would probably change the size of the points, which is kind of difficult to see right now, which is that yellow color. But I wanted to highlight that as well to talk about why there might have been some troubles with doing the reconstruction. And then this is, I believe, a thermal image of the same site. So this is the 10-meter flight reconstructed.
Not thermal.
Not thermal, near infrared.
Right.
Yes, near infrared. Which applies to the research question. So this is the overall view of the field site. And then I wanted to highlight how the near infrared is not really feasible for doing this type of landmine detection, even though these mines are meant to be on the surface. So it's kind of hard to see, and I should probably zoom into this for my final presentation, but if you train your eye, this is an anti-tank TM62, and if you follow it directly across, there is a PFM1 mine out on the field. So if we look at this RGB photo, and you compare it to the near infrared, so we're looking at like some type of a curvature right here. It's not really distinguishable. You cannot see the PFM1 mine in the near infrared. So that kind of highlights, or that answers that question, I guess. So then the other research question that I want to talk about is if we can use individual images. So instead of going at it with getting all of the images and making a reconstruction like we saw in the previous slides, what if we actually just worked with the individual images first? So I think that's about as far as I've got. I do this thesis proposal defense presentation next Tuesday, so I have a little bit of time. But I haven't really gotten into the second part of my thesis, which is answering this question. So that's kind of what I've got for now. Again, the graphics, the layout, that's not finalized, so that's just something to keep in mind. I'm looking for feedback on the content of it and then the general flow of the presentation.
Very much.
If you have any comments.
Yeah, I thought, it flowed pretty well. You're a good speaker, so that, yeah, went through just fine. I think at the end, what I would say is, a lot of the, as a proposal defense,
Mhm.
Outlining, what the deep learning stuff is going to be, I think is key. And you can think of it in big picture things, right? So I think one is using lots of different drones to get lots of different samples of these things in their environment. And then you've already done some, so you can say,
Mhm.
like this, and this is what it looks like. And we're gonna get thousands of these, and that's gonna form a data set that we can then use to do the training. You might have a preliminary, and you could even do it at that point, right? Because you could do a preliminary sort of like, here's what we're trying to do, right?
Mhm.
Here's a stock example, right? We're trying to find this toy in the frame, like whatever it is, right? There's a thing, found it, we found it, we found it, we found it. And the main things to hit there, deep learning requires a lot, like there's no algorithm design, right? It's just labeling, training, and then testing. And so emphasizing that you'll have sort of a training data set and a validation data set will be key. Those will be the kind of thing that your audience will want to
Yeah.
It's a little bit rote because it's the same kind of thing like every deep learning study would have, but that sort of assures your audience I know how to do this.
Yeah.
I think having lots of different drones in lots of different environments, at different zoom levels. I think maybe explaining why we want to do that. And to my mind, the rationale there is just multiplying your data set out. So instead of making a single orthophoto and then training and testing on that one, it's very hard to do with we just don't have enough samples, right? We've got you can test on those data sets, but you can't really train effectively on, 6 mines that are put out in a field. It's an awesome test data set. It's not a good training data set.
Okay.
And so that's the fundamental problem is we need a way to train up. And this seems good. And then the other thing is the synthetic data set, and maybe we haven't gotten so far, but exploring that as an option and potentially comparing those two for efficacy would be good. I think for the multispectral stuff, I would leave in there the red, the most convincing slide there is going to be sort of saying here is a mine, RGB orthophoto, red channel. What are the 4? It's red, green, red edge, and near infrared. And here's what it looks like in each of those frames.
Okay.
And then they're just going to be able to see it for themselves. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. And you can say that this is consistent with the literature, right? And so we're just kind of we're calling it there's no sense in going any further. We've collected the data, we've looked at the data.
Yeah.
It's clear that it's not viable. And that's in line with other people's findings. My advice. Other things?
Yeah, I guess I'll add my 2 cents in here. I thought it was really good, especially for a first, kind of initial thing. But I guess my biggest concern for at least for the presentation aspect is the time. So
Yeah,
I was kind of taking a look at it, and just with this first part, you were at 18 minutes. So, and I know like obviously as you're gonna practice and be more familiar with it, you can like speed it up. But
yeah,
I was just concerned if you add the part about your second research question plus all the stuff that Dr. Pingle talked about, then you might be running into some serious time crunch issues. So as much, and I think like you might want to take a look at some of the introduction stuff, as cool as like as much as I love learning about Roman battle tactics or whatever, I'm not sure if that's necessarily relevant
Yeah.
for the initial purpose of this presentation. So you might want to take a look at kind of trimming some of that stuff out.
yeah, I was thinking about that. I didn't know if I should approach the introduction with the history of the usage of landmines, or if I should do the history of traditional geophysical methods to detect landmines. I didn't really,
I
I
I
don't know.
think in regards to like the history of landmines, like I didn't think it was bad because I think at least in the parts we were talking about the modern usage of it is I thought was good because it informs kind of the purpose of your research of like of why this detection is important. But that same kind of logic can't really be applied to like the Roman stuff because it's as like again it's really cool and I thought it was interesting, but it's not
Yeah.
that particular section was not super relevant for this presentation, I thought.
Yeah, you gotta think of it like a budget, right? Like if I've got 30 minutes to do this whole thing, I agree. I thought it was a cool example. I think you just have to like get all of that stuff in on probably one slide.
Yeah,
But I would leave it in at least as one slide because I think it is really interesting because I didn't know that stuff and it kind of captures people like, oh, that's
yeah,
that's
Okay.
cool. I would also, to tag onto that, like the geophysical stuff that you mentioned, I think is important because I don't think you hit that probably hard enough. So yeah, here's how we usually detect it, and here's kind of why we need to do it with a drone. And that was a point that I think you got into on this on it was one of the middle slides. That I think the idea is you want to be able to sort of say whether you found any there, right, as a first pass. Like there's a slide where you mentioned first pass.
yeah, that was the objective.
And seeing it as a first pass, like, did we find any? Because if you find one, that immediately says, okay, this is the thing we need to take a look at, right? Like that, like knowing that is really useful information. What you can't really do with this is say, whether it's clear, right? You would never be able to say, we have said that there are no mines. Like your ability to do that is super limited, or non-existent. But your ability to say, we found a mine here, that's once you find one, you were 100% certain that there is a mine there. So I would focus in on that, that's you did mention it, but can you go back a little bit? There was another place where you had first pass highlighted and in bold.
This was talking about the
Starting
different
point,
types
starting
of.
point, that was it.
Sure.
That one.
Yep.
So the starting point made 100% sense to me. The second one, defining accurately and with confidence the extent of areas that require clearance. I'm not sure about that one. Because you won't be able to say.
Yeah, with confidence is a little bit, it's kind of stretching it.
Is there, yeah, because it is super useful, but I don't know if you're gonna, what can you do? You can say accurately and with confidence
I can,
that a particular area needs to be cleared,
okay.
right?
Yeah,
That you can do. And this is, we haven't had a tradition in the geography department of having open defenses. When I did my master's defense, it was. Now, it wasn't, first of all, it wasn't a defense. It was, I think, more like it's effectively a defense, but they don't call it that. But you publicly present your plan to a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
80 people in the room when I presented this. And so lots of people get a chance to sort of say, what about this? What about that? It's a good way to engage with everyone. I'd like to see the geography department kind of moving in that direction. So Peter did one with the committee, which is what we did at Virginia Tech. But it is nice to, like, it's nice to do the committee, like, they certainly need to be there. But like, it's nice to have a lot of people, because a lot of people, you know, like Mark Bloomler could be like, oh, well, he's on your committee, but if he wasn't, he'd be like, oh, well, what about this idea? You know, like, you never know where those good ideas are gonna come from, so. Awesome.
Okay.
Good work getting it this far, this early, you know, like, you really wanna be ahead of the game, so good work.
Fine.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate it. Do you want the chair back? Do you want?
Yeah, I'll stop because your stuff is here, but. All right, Peter, do you wanna go next? Sure, you have one? I like the tradition of doing the people that are vocal first, but. Clicker or keyboard?
Yes. Clicker.
Put all these things clickers, that seems really old fashioned.
I do, I call it a clicker.
Loading. Embedded videos on yours?
Yeah. A little bit low. Right, so this is basically like my lab report for say, it's comprises like pretty much like 2 weeks of data collection. Or at least like kind of bits and pieces of it. But yeah, so say I have like thermal video, a lot of manual deer captures, CIW flights, the Nature Preserve 2, which is like the second polygon of the Nature Preserve. And then I want to go into geotagging images and then specific goals. Yeah. So this was a flight over CIW on November 14th. So you can see the deer like pretty clearly in the thermal infrared, and you can see it in the RGB as well. The only thing is that these two images don't, like, if like later on you'll see like where I try to overlay images, these kind of images, they are pretty difficult to overlay, like a line on top of each other. So I'm not sure if this was just because it was manual, or maybe this is a trend with both manual and automated flights.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, here, this one I kind of tried overlaying, but it's like impossible. Like, it was impossible to really overlay correctly. And in the RGB, it's almost impossible to pick out like the deer because they just blend in so well. Like, you can kind of see one towards the center, like towards the right center. You can kind of see that guy. One of them's not even in frame on the RGB. I'm almost positive. But yeah,
Is this the like the telephoto on the RG? Like, because there's two different cameras on the drone, right? There's kind of the wide one and there's the narrow one.
yeah,
So this is the narrow one?
I would think so, just because like the zooms were different.
Yeah. Oh, the zooms are different.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that was my mistake with this manual flight, is that I didn't keep the zooms the same. So that's also a reason why they're very difficult to align. But it is kind of strange that I guess to me it's kind of strange that the deer, there's 3 deer in the thermal infrared, but the one all the way to the right is not really even in frame on the RGB. So I thought that was a little strange. Yeah, that's that. But then these are just like kind of like zooming in a little bit. Now you can see the deer a little bit more clear. You can kind of see the second deer up into like up in the top left, under a bunch of branches. And And what's interesting is you can see how like the thermal signature gets interrupted by the tree branch for the deer in the top left. You can see like that white stripe going straight through it.
Yeah.
But these are also some some of the some gifts that I made for the flights. When I was making this slide, I felt like I was getting kind of dizzy, so that's why there's all this. So that's why there's all that stuff. But yeah, now you can see it like you can see how there's like 4 deer in nature preserve that come straight into view. There's 3 for the CIW. Well, technically 4 too, at least for this flight. This was still November 14th, but those deer were the 4 deer were found at different locations. I think there might even be a 5th one. Yeah, there is a 5th one. And then there's 2 in the top right as well.
Wow. So the color mapping that you used for this, is this all sort of based on the YouTube video that we watched
Yep.
and we changed that setting and like, this is like one of the points that I guess I find myself like coming back to in the last couple of weeks, like how you choose to visualize the data makes the task so much easier. Like it becomes like, like there's visualization and there's analysis, right? Like we could code an algorithm to try to detect these things, but with the right symbology, it just comes right out, and like there's no mistaking it, which means you can analyze it, right? Like the symbolization is a indicator that it can be analyzed. But I don't know, it's like so like I was worried that we weren't going to be able to detect anything in the first couple of weeks, like it was so hard to see the stuff and but now it's obvious.
It's I think that's going to be a new goal, trying to change the symbology for the imagery for the flights, the earlier flights.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so
good idea. Yep. And the motion also makes a big difference, right? Which I guess you're getting to. So.
what will this look like? Oh, now. So then this was a thermal video of 2 deer that I caught in the nature preserve. This guy was pretty chill. He just kind of like did his thing. He didn't really care. But the second guy was a little bit more energetic. So I mean, it's a 5-minute video. I don't know, can I like skip through it?
Yeah.
So this is, so I guess I should describe a little bit more, but this is where the zooms are at different levels, obviously, so the thermal infrared is like completely, like almost completely zoomed out. There's a setting on the controller that makes the zooms the same.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Ah,
So now I turn that setting on and they zoom in at the same time. They zoom in at the same rate.
cool.
So I would bet if I saved those images, they would align pretty nicely. And then second guy. Wow, watch him come into view. So this is when I was just kind of scrolling through CIW, and then this was all that. And then there's the second guy. So like what's interesting though is that like you can't make out where he is in the RGB
You
until
can't.
like until you zoom in. Like it's still very difficult.
We spent like what, 15 minutes kind of just like hunting around the RGBs, like looking to see if we find a deer. Like
It's
there's the first time I see it, like once
Yeah.
it starts moving. Wow. First, maybe I'm blind. I couldn't see the landmine in the photo right here.
so this guy liked to move a lot. So like 1 second he's in frame and then the next second he's not. So I had to keep like hunting him down. But I feel like he
Wow.
looking.
I can't wait till you show this to Dylan. He's gonna love it.
I should send him the video.
Yeah. Invite him over. He's not too busy.
So even now, it's just, I mean, it's 50 meters above the trees. It's nice that it zooms in that far, but even now you can barely make it out.
I think it might be nice to do a committee meeting before we break for, Christmas, just to kind of,
Yeah.
I keep saying Christmas, winter break, I apologize, winter break. I think people are gonna really, I think people are gonna really like this, you know, like, I think the committee is gonna instantly feel like you're on the right track. Good update.
The best part from this coming up pretty soon. I don't want to spoil it for, I don't think you've seen it yet. I don't want to spoil it for when, figure out that, sure we will. But yeah, probably mid-activity. What if I was running around so much before, like, but then see,
Sure.
after it's gone, like, the signature is still there. Which is crazy, but at the same time, that is probably like viable data, just because like there are like. When I fly over the nature preserve, there are like tiny little red spots, and a lot of times I've been able to figure out that those are squirrels, but maybe not now, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
maybe-
Cool.
But I think this is an overlay of when I tried to do the play from Thursday, no, Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. So this is 11:20 when I tried to overlay deer captures with the RGB, and these do not line up at all, pretty much. Like there's deer in the top right, which you can kind of see in the RGB, but still, like it's like not good. So then these are the those are the same two images side by side without the transparency on top of it. But, yeah. Detecting,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just how like small of like an object can be picked up with the thermal generally?
so I would say like the smallest is probably gonna be like a squirrel.
Okay.
Squirrels show up as like tiny little dots, and I was able to zoom in on one before.
Okay, because I was just thinking about like the deer leaving the thermal image behind, because I wasn't sure like if it was something that could have been like, oh, the deer like used the bathroom, or like, you know, or then the heat was still there for a moment kind of thing. But I guess if that's probably too small.
But yeah, but now like the next step is pretty much just gonna be georeferencing, geotagging these images. Instead of like geotagging the entire flight, I'm gonna switch to just geotagging thermal images with deer in them. And what this is gonna try to move into is doing some spatial analysis, like
Yeah,
hopefully like maybe local GWR.
yeah, that's great. Yep. And you say just the ones that have deer in them.
Just the ones that have.
Yeah, that's gonna simplify things a lot. Ah, good idea.
So this tool worked really well at referencing those images, even though they were just JPEGs, which was pretty nice. I tried using a TIFF because I thought TIFF would like store the location information, but I guess not. But this tool works perfect.
Right.
And then this is the newest trail cam. So this is the ASARC. So the thing to note about the ASARC is I feel like the image resolution isn't as good as the Wasota, but what the ASARC does instead is it'll take a simultaneous video as it captures an image, so then it helps to validate. So these are just a bunch of deer capture. With these images, you can pretty much tell where they are, which is pretty nice. But yeah, you don't have to sit through all of it. Because these are two videos.
Hmm.
That will take simultaneously, which is, I think is pretty nice. Not to mention that these trail cams come with a solar panel as well as SD cards that make it very easy, and they have their own app too, to make it very easy to look at data and monitor the trail cameras, whereas the Wasota, you had to buy batteries and a SD card for it. So that just adds a little too much expense. But anyways, this is the Wasota trail cam. You can kind of see the difference in image quality. I think the biggest difference is just the wider camera angle. So you can see like more of where the deer are, but it does seem to capture more.
The clocks are all set correctly on these?
Yep.
And that's cool, you get the temperature as well, I mean, that's really useful for some of the thermal work, you can.
Yeah.
These are great.
And then, so goals is, I didn't really get a chance to log all the deer counts yet, but I'm just gonna start creating separate spreadsheets for UAV and trail cam data. So, and then geotag the JPEG images with deer in them. And then I was also tossing around an idea of like a dashboard applicability. Because previous internship, like I made a cool dashboard that was like exactly work. So and then do a combined automated and manual flight. And then prepare for the 24-hour flight on December 6th. So everybody in labs welcome to join at some point, you know. We're gonna try to do it from 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. or 12 a.m. to 11:59 a.m.
Awesome.
So, and then a side note is just probably should start applying to jobs a little bit. So that's it.
Got it. Okay. So the 24-hour flight, so what do you think about moving to video for all of this stuff? Is it, I mean, are we still planning on just doing photos? Are we gonna do both? Like,
I think it's probably good to do both, like especially if we want to geotag where the deer are.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find the setting to like change an automated flight to like capture video instead of images.
oh, maybe there isn't possible. Okay.
But I think, I'm sure, well, I gotta test it, but I'm sure you can like pause an automated flight.
Now that you've been doing some of the video and you're getting a better sense of this, do you feel like your ability to pick out the deer in the still images is better than it was, like
With the
higher confidence of correctly tagging those? Okay, so maybe it doesn't matter so much. Although I'm still interested, like, it does seem cool to be able to do like an automated, even if it's just real time, like you wouldn't have to record the video the whole time, but it could automatically fly. And then you could pause the mission when you see something, right? You could be watching on oh, there's one, stop, sure you get it. I don't know, we could talk a little bit. Excellent progress, it's great. All right, Bianca?
So exploring the larger project, not actually the larger project, I reviewed this 3 paper. So based on this 3 paper, I was checking, I tried to download a sample data set from here for indoor positioning. I found this website pretty much good, and they have lots of data available there. And I installed Anaconda and tried
Great.
a bit.
Did you say what?
I tried.
Oh, I think you said you cried a little bit. I was like, no, you did badly.
It's very new to me. I haven't used it earlier, but I tried. This is my goal. Reviewing several papers. I have to review more papers.
Yep.
Working on sample data to which is related to build project and learning Python again. I have to recall everything.
How many people are in the Python class next semester?
Me.
All right, good.
That's it from my side. Actually, I was exploring the things.
This is great. So some good news. So we had Ridge Waddell came yesterday. So he was an Esri representative. He's sort of interfaces with universities and I think other things. Helps negotiate licenses and facilitate the use of the products and whatever. But the awesome news was that we were talking about ArcGIS Indoors, and he's going to be able to. We're going to get it for free.
That's great.
And even the indoor positioning system portion of it, he's going to check to see if we can get for free.
Let's go.
So really exciting. I'll keep everybody informed about that. But
So I have a question,
Yeah.
Professor. So when I was checking the build everything project, so I found they use the ohm locks there. So is it still available at your end, the ohm locks technology, the anchors and the tags?
they are, yeah. So we could potentially use those. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm sure we could get them to mail us those. I'm sure they're just sitting in a box. No one is going to need those for a while. So.
And I was checking for this ground floor, we need only 2 anchors.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll write them and see. I'm sure they'd be happy to send them.
Thank you. That's it from my end. I don't have anything more.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So I'll turn it over to you, Liam.
Okay.
Probably I'll turn on sharing and you can control it all from there.
Yeah, that probably works best.
Okay. You should be able to do it.
Okay. Okay, cool. Let me just do that. Okay, so this week I'm presenting a paper that I read titled On the Fly Strategies for UAV-Based Archaeological Survey for Landscape Research by Lynn Rouse and Jan Krumnow from 2020. Yeah, so this paper I thought was pretty interesting because a lot of the papers that I've been reading recently have kind of emphasized the point of UAV-based research is, like useful, and some of them are like we want to try to develop standards for like how it's done. But at least in my opinion, they never really did a great job of it, or at least in the sense that they weren't very detailed in exactly like their methodology and what they did, which is why I found this paper really interesting. So they kind of focus again on the points that, as the years progresses, and this is obviously a few years from now. So there's more UAV-based LiDAR research being done in archaeology, but more like there's still very many areas with poor coverage, particularly in the area of Central Asia, where this focuses on. And part of that is due to just difficult to reach places. There's, rough terrain out there, and there's a lot of local restrictions that are like pretty tough. Because of that, there's not really a wide base of UAV pilots in that area, and the ones that they do have, the authors titled "Out of the Box Pilots," which means they're not professionals in any way. They're more like amateurs. So they have pretty limited experience, and they are not necessarily able to conduct the full surveys that you would want, for these types of research. So they kind of wanted to focus on that gap between professional researchers and the adepts. So they noted that a lot of existing research focuses on a lot of the technical details of this research and specific case studies, and there's not a lot of middle ground use information for people trying to get into the field. So just kind of like literature wise, there's a pretty high barrier for entry and kind of an assumption that people know what they're talking about and kind of what's going on and stuff like that. And though that's not necessarily the case. So this one kind of wanted to focus on that middle ground and kind of explain things a bit better for those who might not necessarily be involved in the professional academic sense of this research. So they conducted us 3 surveys. The first survey they did was in Kyrgyzstan in 2018. They used the DJI Mavic Pro, and then everything, their mapping and stuff was done in an app called Drone Deploy on their iPhones. And so they did. This particular area of terrain had a lot of elevation change, so they conducted a several number of smaller surveys to accommodate the terrain, because based on Drone Deploy they couldn't they had to use one set altitude. They couldn't change it with the terrain, which is one thing that they noted was a difficulty. So that in order to adapt to this, they first tried using several surveys, as you can see up top. And they use non-standardized polygon size, which generally comprise of 1 to 3 flights. And this was all offline use. There's not like really any connection or anything out in the mountains of, this area of Central Asia. So that meant that before they went out and flight, they had to create their polygons and stuff. They did obviously were able to manipulate it, but they couldn't save any changes, which means that they couldn't repeat the same polygon over and over again because they couldn't save those changes, and also partial progress. If they flew like half the study area, then had to stop, they couldn't resume it, so they would have to start all over again, which they noted was a challenge. As far as the results of the survey, they said it was, generally okay. They produced 2 orthophotos with a resolution of 4.8 centimeters per pixel. They noted that significant rifts and cracks appeared in the data, as you can see kind of in the image in the top right. And this was attributed to the different elevations of the images not entirely matching up. So they had to do a lot of manual tie points in the post-processing. So they noted in order to make it look good, they had to add 68 tie points, and it said it took them about 4 days, like 4 computer days to work on all 68 tie points and get it to work. And even then, there was still like some cracks, and it still wasn't totally great.
Sounds like advanced remote sensing class.
Yeah. So they followed this one up with another survey in 2018 in Tajikistan. Tajikistan, sorry. They used the DJI Phantom 4 Pro for this one, and they used Drone Deploy again. This was because I think the first one was conducted in August and this one was in November, so I didn't really have time to totally change out the equipment that they were using. But this time, instead of doing several grid patterns, they used one single high elevation one to capture the whole area. However, they noted that there was because of the change in elevation, this area was greater than 500 meters, which I didn't know. This is apparently the altitude limit for the DJI devices. So you can't send a DJI drone above 500 meters from its takeoff point, which they noted, which essentially made them have to really try to figure out where they were going to take off from, because that would greatly impact the amount of data they could collect. They also noted that they had some technical issues with their data and they lost their flight logs due to some glitches. So all that kind of stuff had to be kind of reconstructed on what they did have, which was an issue. And they also had issues with sometimes the camera just wouldn't take pictures when it was supposed to, which was another problem.
As you're going into this, I love this. This is this is how, especially in 2018, like some of this stuff is a lot better than it used to be. But I love that this is an accounting of what an actual, all the problems, all the headaches, all of this didn't work. You're totally
Yeah.
in a lot of papers that just gets swept under the rug, and all you hear about is all the, this is awesome. This is great.
Yeah, this is kind of one of the reasons I really wanted to present this paper, because I thought it was really unique in that way.
I'm gonna start assigning this one in advanced remote sensing. This is really good.
Yeah, so as far as the results for this one, they had 22.1 meter per pixel of an orthophoto. They had minor cracks, this because they did end up having to do a second mission because there was some like just bad overlap with the like or in the elevation change meant like it was kind of weird. So they did that part again. And then also in the second survey, they also just straight up missed a mountaintop, so they had to go and do that mountaintop again, as you can see in the bottom B image. So there were some minor cracks due to that. But because they did the one initial survey of a single altitude, there was significantly less post-processing work with only needing 37 tie points, which is still a lot. But overall, it just generally performed better than the first one. So in 2019, they went back to Kyrgyzstan to try to improve on the results and also compare this survey. So they used the DJI Mavic Pro again. However, instead of they used a different app. They used Map Pilot for Business, which was a paid for app. I think they said it cost them $50. However, it was able, the big bonus of this was the ability to kind of move at a constant altitude from the terrain. And because of this, they noted that this kind of solved a lot of the problems that they were having. And one thing to note is the previous two surveys were just doing parallel lines. They weren't like doing the grid pattern necessarily. So this one did use the grid where they went back over in the other direction. They noted that they did run into some issues with the app crashing, which was a concern, but they noted that they figured out the reason for this was a memory issue, and as the drones collected, every time the drones collected 600 pictures, then the app would crash. So basically, they just had to like reset the drone. So it would essentially be like the memory would be starting from zero, and so they kind of solved that issue. They also noted that there was issues with like for some reason they were having issues with the return to home speed. So they would fly at whatever speed they set, and then when it was trying to return home, it would slow down significantly for no apparent reason, which is a big concern because of the battery life. And they did note it at the beginning of the survey. They did actually have one instance where the drone ran out of battery because of this and ended up crashing.
Wow.
So so that was a big concern. The researchers weren't entirely sure why this was happening, but it was something that they noted. So the results for this image. The flights themselves took about 21% more time than the other ones, but they were able to cover the 3 times the area. And they noted that the grid pattern didn't like the grid pattern images when they processed all the images didn't really have great like significantly improvements to the 2018 survey. However, if they just did the parallel lines, they had there was no cracks, there was no issues or anything, so they had really great results. So general discussion, again, they focused on the idea that UAVs are a great tool for high resolution research, but again, they've emphasized on the high barrier to entry. So even with this data, then you kind of require trained archaeologists to make sense of it, to kind of process it and understand what they're looking at. And again, that's kind of attributes to the high barrier of entry. So like you can't like an amateur would not be able to pick up and do this research and just present the results that a trained academic would have. And also in the sense that like train and even with trained archaeologists that this would not necessarily be beneficial to them because UAV training is time intensive and expensive, and you have to get all the UAV parts. And for people who have not necessarily done that, then that's a difficult thing to kind of devote their time into as kind of a diversion from what they are traditionally studying. And so generally they concluded that it serves best as an initial guide for ground truthing research. And obviously a big part of archaeology is the actual ground research. So they wanted to emphasize that this certainly in no way replaces that, and that is still an essential part of the archaeological research. So goals for me are just more flying. Buckman and I wanted to fly yesterday, but weather happened, so that wasn't great. And then I need to just work on the 500 proposal for class, and then just do some more grading.
Cool, awesome, thanks, Liam.
Mhm.
All right, and Lily, will I see you this afternoon?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to wait for the snow to calm down before I made the trek.
Got it, okay, all right. That's it then for everyone? No presentation from you, right, Lily?
Pardon?
Do you have a presentation?
No, I didn't have enough to put together, so I didn't want to like take up time.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, we'll wrap it up then. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you later.